Hello viewers, I'm Professor Reju. Today we'll be discussing on distance education in Africa with special focus on South Africa. And I have with me in the studio Professor Dele Braimoh. Professor Dele Braimoh is the Pioneer Director of the Institute of Education for Open and Distance Learning at UNISA. Professor Braimoh has held different positions, of course at university level, and he's conducted research and involved in many activities over 25 years. He's well traveled, so he's the one we're having today in the studio. Professor Braimoh, you are very much welcome.
Thank you very much.
We just want to know, how do you see the contribution of distance education in Africa, and specifically in South Africa? I mean, what is the contribution of distance education?
Well, distance education, which I would believe is not a new phenomenon in South Africa or on the continent generally. The reality is that the technology, the infiltration of technology in distance education has only been the transformation I would see. However, one would think that because of the hitherto marginalized individuals who could not have had access to education, were it be that we focus essentially on conventional universities, distance education has gone into that area of transformation to create wider accessibility for people who would not have had any university education. And I know that is not just all that it has done, is bringing the university to the grassroots level.
Can you please just share with us where do we really have the greatest impacts? What are the areas where we have the greatest impacts of distance education in Africa, and especially in South Africa?
First and foremost, I would think that right now we see it more in the area of workers' education. What I mean essentially is that before now, it used to be very easy for people who are workers, because I would say that the focus of originally was to the workers. People could be allowed to go to the university for the further studies while they are still working. But unfortunately, as a result of the global economic recession, things have changed drastically. There is no employer of labor who wants to release their staff members for 3-4 years study in the university. So in this case, there is the possibility for workers now to study. In fact, I call it earning and learning. You know, this now go pari passu. You don't have the disruption of your family. You don't have the problem of your work. You don't have any problem. The only thing, therefore, you have is that it may be fluid, but then you need to create some kind of level of seriousness to be able to benefit from what you are doing now. In other words, learning and earning. Yeah. But beyond that also, one could see that for the teacher's development, it is very basic. In fact, that is one area that ODL has penetrated very essentially. For instance, in most of the, well, maybe I could generalize to say the Commonwealth countries, but more particularly on the continent of Africa, where we have scarcity of teachers, qualified teachers. You can imagine what kind of innovation ODL has contributed into the development and teacher development. So for this, I believe that it has really penetrated highly on those two levels. That does not mean that that's all, but at least significantly, those two levels have had a touch of distance education.
Well, as a specialist and expert and a professional, do we have some potential growth areas, I mean frontiers that we should be thinking about, that we should really begin to explore as far as distance education mode is concerned, in Africa, especially South Africa?
Yeah, I think even in this conference that we're talking about, that we just had, the essential component areas that I would think everybody would think of, one would be the open schooling. Okay. If we really have to have qualitative education.
Yeah.
Open schooling is the way out now.
Okay.
Otherwise, there will be many people who will be alienated.
Sorry, just coming. You are talking about open schooling. What do you mean by, because tertiary is there, resource schooling.
Okay.
Secondary school is there, resource schooling. Primary. What do you really mean?
You see, the open schooling, although there may be different concepts or terminologies to this or interpretations to this concept, what I mean is that if we have especially focusing on secondary school, using ODL on secondary school education, it will be very, very essential. With the statistics, that's very, very frightening statistics of people who don't even have access to secondary school education. Those are things that we need to focus on using ODL.
Okay, so
facility.
that's one. Yeah.
That's one. Two, you see, in UNESCO sometimes, I think it was in 1990, there was that kind of launch of the mass literacy campaign. In most African countries, it has happened in Tanzania, it has happened in Nigeria, it has happened in very many of these developing countries of Africa or even of the world. I think this is another area we have to focus attention on using the ODL. Frankly speaking, there is still high rate of illiteracy in these countries. And if we want to change, because an illiterate person is almost, if not a dead person, he is a very, very incapable person.
Do we see that need in South Africa especially?
It is.
Mass literacy.
Of course, it is there, because I don't see any reason why we should not in most of the African countries, but we need to now adopt the ODL process in articulating that kind of particular process, and it would really go a long way to contribute to development at the end of the day. And finally, the other one is skills development. Most of the programs of education, that is ministries of education across the board, is fine. But the major thing is that access for success, yes, that's one good thing, which ODL can really create. But the major problem is that we're turning out most of our graduates without the ability to become employers of labor. In other words,
do we have such a scenario in South Africa?
We don't. I'm saying that generally, this is an area, in fact, in most African countries, this is what we should be focusing on, using the ODL process. That how do we do not think alone of how to create access for success, but we want to make sure that those products who are turned out of these higher institutions of learning are those who will not essentially be job seekers, but job creators. Yeah. So this is another area in skills development using the ODL.
I mean, you will be very much interested in knowing what are some of the challenges, obstacles, in making use of distance education, in the continent, especially in South Africa. Okay.
Well, I would focus, there are quite a number of challenges, inhibitions, problems. Let me say first, the first one is the public perception of ODL. Okay. You see, the temerity with which the public perceives ODL products and programs is really unfortunate. And if continuously this orientation is not changed, it will lead to some kind of looking down on it, and people will not really want to employ people from ODL. Whereas I do not see any far gap between the traditional conventional universities and ODL, except of course that the lack of the lecturer standing before the students in the conventional. But the quality, there is nothing one can say. It is a substandard program. And that, in other words, we should work towards reorientating the public's perception of the quality of ODL. That is one. Two, there is inadequate funding. When we are talking in terms of governments, well, we know that in most African countries, the greater financier of higher institutions of learning are the government, the ministries, all that. I think there must be greater focus on the funding, because inadequate funding will lead to ineffective product at the end of the day. So funding must really be there. Thirdly, there must be trained personnel. There must be curiosity, a deliberate attempt to encourage, to improve the quality of personnel, be it the academics, be it the professionals, be it the support staff. Because essentially people come from the conventional universities, just to practice in ODL without formal training. So there must be some kind of professionalization of ODL, and that is through training. The major problem is the area of commercialization.
In what area?
It's unfortunate that people, you have so many of fly-by-nights. It happens in South Africa in particular too. And I don't see any country in Africa that has not had this kind of taste. Either foreign or even local institutions just springing up in the name of creating a wider accessibility. And to that, they are not giving the quality products to the people. Rather, they are exploiting people. This is the commercialization aspect I'm referring to. And if there are some people who are not even expected to have an outfit of a secondary school, suddenly you see them offering higher education programs. And with no facility, no personnel, no infrastructures. This is a calamity. And I think we have to watch out for that. More importantly, too, I think the government of Africa or the Commonwealth should make a deliberate effort regarding a policy framework.
Okay, policy.
It is important. If there is no regulatory framework that will say who comes in, who can offer this to what level, and at what period of time. Now, if everybody is it's a free comer kind of a thing, then we are heading towards a disaster. And I think there must be articulated attempt to be able to put in place a policy framework which will govern it. In fact, it could be across the continent, and that will make life easier. And finally, is the maintenance of quality. With the policy framework, that will be inbuilt into the whole process, how to maintain quality. Because without maintaining quality, it will not be excusable for us to say that, oh, this product is this and that. In other words, I'm saying that maintaining quality of it will be able to confirm to the unbelievers that the quality of distance education products or the programs would be just the same, if not better, than the conventional universities.
Thank you very much, Professor Braimoh. Viewers, we have listened to Professor Braimoh. Has really told us various areas where distance education has really made a contribution in the continent, especially in South Africa. And the greatest area where we had impacts talks about teachers' education and all that. And then the possible areas, again, potential growth areas, we had about mass literacy, skill development, and all that. Of course, all these are not without challenges and obstacles, which he has shared with us. Professor Braimoh, we are very, very grateful for your contribution, and thanks so much. Viewers, thank you very much.